Hello, my name is Matthias, and welcome to the Game Week 22 edition of the FPL Scope podcast. With me today, I have, as always, my co-host Kevin, and he has actually activated his wildcard for Game Week 22, which we're going to talk a lot about. But first, we have to say goodbye to a legend in Kevin's team. He wildcarded back. His first wildcard was back in Game Week 4, I think, and one of the shrewd signings he made back then was Nuno Tavares, who provided him exactly 1 point throughout these 18 game weeks. So what stands out to you from Tavares' time, and especially that 1 pointer in Game Week 5? That was really good for you.
Yeah, I mean, considering the left back situation that they've had and how the left back has produced, it's a bit of a thing that Tavares was injured for as long as he was. I don't think it was widely touted that he'd be out for that long as he's been, but yeah, it is what it is. I can't really complain. He was always third bench, and
Yeah, I
I
think
think only once it would have helped me if he was playing. So um, I'm not too fussed, to be fair. Good for him that he's back on the pitch again. Bad for him that he's kissing his dog on the lips.
he's got that dog in him, but you don't have him in your team anymore.
Yeah.
Because you've activated your wildcard, and he's not in the team. Spoilers, a bit of spoilers for that. But you're actually activating your wildcard from sort of a position of strength, because you did have a pretty good game week this past game week. You got 87 points. You did 2 transfers, Salah to Richarlison, who scored 8 points, and then Nkunku to Tony for a hit. And then you captain Tony, and he got 8 points times 2, which is 16 for you as your captain. Still less than Palmer, but still a really good score from him, and he easily could have had more as well. So what do you feel about your transfers and your Game Week 1 score in general? What stood out to you in this past game week, which was a really long game week, by the way. It lasted for so long. But yeah, what do you feel about Game Week 21?
Yeah, complete bullshit with the whole Gabriel Saka situation where we could have been given an assist and a goal, but who cares? At the end of the day, 17 points is more than we would have potentially ever have imagined with Gabriel. But hey, unlike a certain pundit that was a part of our team, we know that Gabriel's a bit of an attacking threat.
True.
And yeah, I'm very happy with the score. Obviously, Richarlison's on the form of his life right now, so I figured he'd score, and he did. Pedro Porro just keeps getting these random ass corner assists and should stay on corners, in my opinion,
Probably.
whilst the form is hot. Tony, it was just written in the stars. He's super unlucky that he didn't get 2 assists as we watched the entire game. Like he looked like someone who hadn't missed a beat. The only thing that was kind of silly was the fact that he got a stupid yellow card. But
Yeah.
besides that, I mean, I can't fault him. It's just 2 points less than Palmer. I was taking a gamble. I think the gamble worked out perfectly fine because I still gained on people because not a lot of people had Tony in that game week. So
Yeah.
yeah, very happy with the score. All things considered, Alvarez sucks. Unfortunate, I guess, that KDB is just back in such good form and etc. Foden was super unlucky in the game. Ollie Watkins has been garbage for a long time, and I know the minute I get rid of him, he's going to get a hat trick. So it's going to be super annoying. Estupinian has been great since I
Yeah.
brought him in, and he's going to continue to be great. And the fixtures, I think, will
Yeah.
dictate that, but I think it's a little bit alarming that they're so inconsistent in terms of goal scoring. So we'll have to wait and see
Yeah.
what's going on there. But other than that, very happy with the team, all things considered. Yeah.
Yeah, you did mention Brighton and their goal scoring, but now they're getting a lot of players back, including one of our favorites, Ansu Fati, who's on his way to return now to play as well. I think he's yellow flagged now still in FPL, but he's on his way back. They also have several other players. Mitoma is going to come back from injury not too long from now.
Yeah.
Adingra got knocked out of the AFCON yesterday, didn't he? Or are they still to play? They are probably still to play. I can't remember. Yeah. Nigeria knocked out Cameroon, so he's not out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have a couple players left. And Ciso as well is going to come back at some point, most likely. So they have actually quite a bit of attacking talent now coming back. So I think they're going to score a lot of goals. And I think his opinion is just going to be a terrific asset. Whether he plays as a left centre back, which is sort of what he has done lately, where he's been like a bonus potential machine, or if he plays further up and gets those assists and goals that we know from him, he's just a terrific prospect. So well done for you for bringing him in as well on like a regular transfer. You didn't even wildcard him in like I did, but you went for him, and it's paid off for you so far. And Gabriel as well. We've always had faith in him, and he repaid us with the 17 points. So yeah, fantastic game week for you, and pretty good game week for me as well. But not everyone had such a good game week. But before we get into the next player or next manager we're going to talk about, what made you wildcard after this good game week, and what was like the thought process behind that before we get into your plans later on in the video?
I had a lot of injuries, a lot of things that were very uncertain. And I also think that now that so many things have been cleared up for the future, I think it's easier to plan things accordingly and
Mm.
to try and set a team that works. Unfortunately, that also means that I might have a team that has like three players in game week 29, but I guess I'll just have to take that hit if that's what I end up doing. But um, personally, I just think that there's so many injuries. There's so many potential things that could happen with Salah, with Haaland, with this, with that. So I felt that to future proof, it was a lot easier just to do a wild card early.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have your free hit, so navigating 29 was always going to be difficult for you, regardless of what you did.
Yeah.
So, and you also don't really have you only have Tsimikas from Liverpool, and he's not going to play anymore because Robertson came back and played today, even. So you don't even have a single Liverpool player. You do have two City players, but you have another player that you brought in, which we're going to talk about as well, who you really want from City. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for you to wildcard, because you are in a bit of a different situation where you don't have your free hits, so you sort of have to plan for Game Week 29 in advance, and also for the doubles and blanks that are coming up as well, because you have several Spurs players who are not going to play in Game Week 26. You have Palmer, who's not going to play in 26. You don't have that Liverpool coverage, you do blank in 26 for that, for what it's worth, but they do also double in 25. So yeah, I think it makes sense for you to wildcard, but we'll see about your wildcard later on in the video, where you're going to discuss both my weekly wildcard draft suggestion and your wildcard as well, and what you can do now, because you did do your wildcard a couple days ago, so that was before we knew all the stuff about Gaming 29 that we know now, so we can actually workshop it as we speak on this podcast. But yeah, moving on to the player who did not have such a good game week this past game week in Game Week 21 was Kimo, the third and final founding member of the FPL Scope podcast. He ended up with only 46 points and taking a -4 hit at that to go down to 42 points in total for the game week. And I don't quite understand the hit that he took to go from Agard to Branthwaite, because he benched Branthwaite for 6 points. And he didn't really need to do that to save money for anything either. He doesn't even have enough money to go from Alvarez to Haaland if need be for next game week either. So yeah, quite interested to hear his thoughts about that, because I tried to reach out to him, but I didn't hear from him today in terms of his plans and stuff either. But kind of a weird decision there. But he was actually, when we looked at his plans for Game 21 this past week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, now on the FPL School podcast, he actually had plans to bring in Jota in for Salah, Richarlison in for Son, and Estupinian in for Agard, which would have been a massive boost for him, especially if he had captain Jota or something gone for something like that, because he did captain Saka for 6 points as well. So kind of a disaster of a game week for Kimo there. And he also still has Salah and Chimikas on the bench, who are both out for now at least. We'll see about Salah. But yeah, what do you think about Kimo's transfers? What do you think was in his thought process? Do you think any of the moves are defensible? Do you think they're all bad? Do you think there's something he could have done differently?
I see why he's lost faith in Solaki. So I get that. Foden isn't the worst pick in the world. Foden was red hot before he jinxed him, and Branthwaite. I think that could have just waited. I have
Yeah.
no idea why he felt the need that he had to do it and then bench him as well. But that's sort of hindsight thing to say. But that being said, Aston Villa haven't been in the best goal scoring form, so it begs to differ why he wouldn't start him. And to be completely honest, it's lucky that Conte even kept the clean sheet, because we definitely should have won that game with the one Calvert-Lewin chance that
Yeah,
was poorly
awful.
converted. My God. Yeah, not the wisest decisions, and obviously reflects in the um, yeah, in the sort of score. But at the same time, I can't fault him for trying to go with Juan Pedro. I think that would have been a fun differential, and I still think could be a fun differential,
Yeah,
especially with their easier matches going forward. Foden again, he seems like the most locked in player in a Pep side since Messi. So it's a bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, I just yeah. Again, I don't understand the Aguerd Brandtway thing. That could have waited a week.
yeah. And who knows? Maybe Aguerd gets knocked out of the African Cup of Nations as well, and is back for next week as well. So he's going to be back
No.
playing when they get knocked out. So within game week 25, he's going to be back in the side for West Ham. So
Yep.
yeah, especially if it's not going to use Branthwaite for the next few game weeks, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, what do we know? We'll see if we hear from him and his plans as well for next week. But also want to talk about Salah a bit because he didn't sell Salah. I didn't do that either. You did, obviously. But what do you think about Salah and his potential now to play? Do you think he has a chance to make it for 25, double game week 25, game week 24? Do you think it's worth it to hold on to him just in case that could happen? Because he has a really nice double game week, and now a lot of people are going to be without Salah for that game week. So what do you think about Salah in general? And do you think maybe it's time for Kimo to sell him, or do you think he should try to keep him now that he has kept him for this long?
Do you really lose that much value getting rid of him and using, say, a Jota as a rental for the time being? Because I don't think that's the worst decision, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on how much money you have invested in him, like how late you brought in Salah. But Chemo's had him since the start of the season as well. We've all had him since the start of the season. Well, you until you sold him now this past game week. So for us, he is priced at 13 point, or he started at 12.5, and he's gone up in price all the way up to 13.1, which means he has a selling price of 12.8 as of now, at least, until he goes down in price. So it's like point 0.3 potentially. So yeah, that is actually a fair point. Maybe you can just sell him and bring him back, but at the same time, transfers are very like vital to use now, vital to keep as many as you can for that blank and then double, or the double and then blank game weeks in game
Mhm.
25 and 26. So yeah, for me, I'm still like wondering if I'm gonna keep Salah or sell Salah. It really just depends on what happens with Egypt, really, which is going to be happening before you guys watch this video, because that match is being played later tonight as we're recording this on Sunday. So yeah, if Egypt get knocked out, I wouldn't be too surprised if Salah all of a sudden is like making a quick recovery and it's going to be back. I think he could actually make a quick recovery and be back for the semifinals, regardless if they make it there as well. So I don't know. For me, it's very much up in the air whether I sell Salah or not. But yeah, just interested to hear your thoughts there. Also, when it comes to Trippier, he has had a terrible time for a long while now. Newcastle have had a terrible time for a long while now, but pretty soon their matches will turn around if you go to the fixture ticker. They'll actually have some pretty decent matches right after the Aston Villa game now. Luton at home, Nottingham Forest away, and Bournemouth at home. And then even after the Arsenal away game, which is a tough game in 26, they also have pretty good matches. So what do you think about Trippier in general? Do you think he's going to reach the highest that he has had previously in the season, or do you think Newcastle defense is just a no-go at this point?
Isn't he going to Bayern? What happened with that?
They've rejected the bid from Bayern, and it doesn't seem like the deal is going to be happening. I think that's at least what Romano said, but it could still happen. But assuming he stays is what I'm asking. Like, what
Okay. It's hard to say. He's
do you
been
think?
so dog shit lately.
Yeah,
I think, of course, he can, considering the fact that I said the same thing last year and then I ended up having him this year. So it could be just he's actually a 6 month player, if that makes sense. Like he's good for the first 6 months and then dog shit for the rest. And it seems to be trending because that's currently what's happening. He was so good in the beginning, and now where we were like, oh, he's shoe in for team of the season to now being like he's shit. So
yeah,
it's tough to say. I always say that class is permanent, and of course, I know that he's I know he's capable of a lot more than what he's done lately, but I also think that Newcastle as a whole are going to be performing a lot better in these easier fixtures, and they just need to get that run of sort of steam of just grinding out wins and getting back into it, and that'll do a major thing for confidence. But if the confidence continues and they lose to random ass teams like Nottingham Forest, where Chris Wood scores a hat trick against him, it's not going to look good, bro.
Yeah.
But if it's a question of if they can grind out the wins, then yeah, I definitely think that Trippier has what it takes. But for the time being, I think that sort of money is better spent elsewhere.
Yeah. Would you go for someone like Trent or down to Estepinian or?
Yeah, sure. I definitely think Stupinian is the best option considering the fact that they have the easiest one. I also think Kyle Walker has been a popular pick, and
Yeah,
I can
he's
see
a
a lot
good
of
pick as well.
people going with him because he does get the odd assist lately and is a lot more attacking than he usually is. So yeah, I think there are just a lot of good options, and um, I'd say just wait with Newcastle, at least defensively, until things look a little bit better. Like stick with the Dubravka maybe and go with Isak instead of
Yeah,
going with Trippier and Isak or something like that.
attacking wise, they've actually been pretty good. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think Isak is a really nice differential shout, especially now after the Aston Villa game. But even against Aston Villa, they can score. Aston Villa haven't been the best defensively this season either. So yeah, he's definitely someone that you could consider offensively. But going from someone with a terrible game week, we move to the player with the best, or the manager with the best game week in the FPL Scope Mini League. And as you can see, the manager name is Tim Nisaka, and if you look below Kevin there, it says Kevin Nisaka, and that's because he is the brother of Tim Nisaka, and Tim has actually been the manager of the week earlier in the season as well. Back then, he was actually with you in London. He was actually on the podcast, but now he's touring around in Asia, eating lots of good food and stuff, on a little bit of a vacation there. But what I want to know, because the brilliant move he did was selling Salah to Jota and then captaining Diogo Jota for 38 massive points. But you actually have some insights into how he came to that fantastic conclusion of captaining Jota over the likes of Saka and Palmer. So what went into Tim's thinking when he chose Jota as captain for that massive haul of 38 points?
It was a complete default. I don't understand where he was saying it's between Jota and Palmer when Palmer's not even his like vice captain. So why are you chatting shit? It was a clear mistake. He forgot to change it, and it worked out for the best. So instead of trying to sound like you had always planned this, how about you just admit you got lucky and it worked out for the best? And this happened to him once in the past as well where but that time I had done it and he had gotten very angry at me where I had captained him Sterling for him against Watford because I was going to do that. And he was
Mm.
like, "No, I told you I wanted this thing." And Sterling got a hat trick and we got like I think we got 38 points as well or something ridiculous like that. And then he afterwards he's like, "Yeah, but I was going to captain Sterling all along." And I was just like, "What?" You got so angry at me about it. He was so annoyed about the captaincy as well. He's like, oh my God, I hope after Palmer's 10 points, he's like, oh my God, I hope he, does something. And then when I told him that Tony scored, he's like, oh my God, I hope Jota does something. And we just saw Jota just go fucking riot. And we're like, oh, that's great for everyone who has him. And yeah, there was a substantial amount of people who did have him. And Tim, who's your biggest threat to winning the league, got all on the money.
It's true. But yeah, like you said, it is quite telling that his vice captain is Watkins and his captain is Jota, formerly known as Salah, because that's exactly the same captaincy decisions he had the week before. The captaincy was
Yeah.
on Salah, and then vice captaincy was on Watkins in Game Week 20 as well. So yeah, but either way, bringing in Jota is not a mistake.
Mm.
That's something he actually did. So you
Yeah, of
should,
course.
even if you didn't mean to captain him, should give him a lot of credit for just getting Jota because he is a really fantastic pick and he's getting really popular now as well. So yeah, hats off to him for doing that. I was thinking along the same lines to myself. I actually had Salah to Jota as like one of my potential plans, and then I sort of chickened out because I wanted more flexibility for the future, which is kind of a big flaw in my own thinking. Like that's what happened with me with Trippier earlier in the season as well, when like I can't invest in Trippier because that means that I don't have enough money to get this, and this player in 4 or 5 game weeks from now, which is not really the best way to play FPL. So yeah, good on Tim for actually doing that transfer. He also had Gabriel with 17 points. Kyle Walker, who's another player I really want in my own team, 6 points, and he could have had more as well. He had 1 assist. Could have had a second one or even a third one. He's actually looking pretty good. Pedro Porro with 6 points. Richarlison with 8 points.
And Porter should have had more points as well because
He had that
he got
one almost assist.
for Romero
Yeah.
where Romero just headers it onto a bar. Fucking idiot. Anyways.
Yeah, Porro, if he, that's what I've been saying all the time as well. If he keeps having corners, and he really should, like, to be honest, even as someone who hopes that he doesn't have corners anymore, he really should keep them because he is delivering fantastically on all set pieces, basically. So, but yeah, it remains to be seen if Madison takes set pieces away from him or not. Madison actually came on in the cup fixture now yesterday, but they didn't get a set piece, like a free kick or a corner, so we couldn't really see if it was him or Porro who were going to take them because they play in Man City, so they couldn't really get the ball in the attacking third. But yeah, either way, Tim, second manager of the week that he's had this season. I think there's one more manager who's had manager of the week twice. And for anyone else watching, you can also become the manager of the week in the FPL Scope Mini League if you just join the Mini League and you become the highest scoring player of that or one particular game week. And you can join the FPL Scope Mini League with the league called V9JT0D. The other transfer Tim did was Bowen to Foden, so he could have potentially gotten even more points there, but I think Foden was actually the right transfer, for me at least. He already has Richarlison, Palmer, Saka, who are like kind of template picks. Foden was sort of the last one he needed. He did sort of have enough funds to go with KDB, but he came on as a sub, and you couldn't really see that happening. Basically. But yeah, good game for Tim. No chance to talk to him now because he's in Asia, but hats off to him, even though he got a bit lucky with the Jota captaincy. But that's the name of the game. Sometimes you get lucky. Next up, we have the results predictions from this past game week, the long-ass game week, which started at the 12th of January, and we're recording this at the 28th of January, so a long time ago, Burnley Luton played a draw. I think it was 1-1 after that controversial final goal where what's his face, Carlton Morris scored after.
Yeah, they just keep getting away with this fucking bullshit. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. Scored a goal that shouldn't have stood, basically. But that's a long time ago. But either way, going through this game week, we talked about this a bit before the podcast as well. Not really that many standout results. Like, we didn't get everything correctly. Obviously, we got half of them correct. But most of the games were pretty close to what we did predict as well. You were close to getting that 2-1 West Ham win. Probably should have been as well. But instead of getting a green for a correct scoreline, you get a red for incorrect results. So it's just like the fine margins that defines this prediction game, I guess. But for you, what matches really stood out to you? It was a long game week with several matches in it. Any surprising results or surprising turns of events or anything in any of these games?
I mean, Sheffield West Ham, because I thought that was the biggest farce I've seen in a long time. Obviously, I Burnley Luton was another one where I feel really bad for Burnley that it. I mean, it works the best for Everton in that regards, but I thought Burnley were so much better than Luton in that game that it felt really harsh for them to end up drawing it, and especially when there's a foul in the build-up and everything. Super frustrating. Other than that, I think all the games kind of went as I expected because I did get a lot of yellows, and I reckon um, had certain things gone my way, like um, Brentford, uh, Brentford, probably Burnley, and some of these other games I would have had even better results than five. But generally speaking, yeah, all the games went kind of as envisioned. I think the Brighton Wolves one was a bit of a miss because
Yeah,
there was no goal scored
yeah,
or
no.
anything, and I don't know if that's the Serbi's fault because Brighton, I think, should have won that game. But it's hard to say. It's not that difficult to say that De Zerbi is always thinking out of his ass when he picks the strikers to play. Just keeps
Yeah.
benching all the wrong players. So
Yeah. But at least you got the clean sheet for Brighton, correct? That's at least
yes,
something
yes,
you can take from
yes.
that. Because, yeah, they've been really defensively solid lately, which is kind of a surprising turn of events. But Estupinian back in the side, like we talked about earlier as well, just a massive boost for them in general. I think they're going to be... I don't know. They have a lot of matches to play as well, because I think they're going to go pretty far in the FA Cup. It seems like they're going to have... They got a decent draw. I think... I can't remember. They had a Premier League team, actually. I think it was like... I don't know, I can't remember exactly who they drew, but they might go far in the FA Cup. They might go far in the Europa League as well, potentially. So they are facing a lot of battles on different fronts, but I think with the players coming back from injury, I think that's going to help them. And Estepinian has already helped them because they have been like the best team in the past few matches, but they just haven't been able to score that winning goal, basically. Apart from in the cup, where all the cups, Joe Pedro scores like 2 penalties per game, it seems like, but that could happen in the future in Premier League as well. But yeah, in total, we both got 5 correct results each, and I got 1 correct scoreline, and you did not. But the 1 correct scoreline I did get was Man United Spurs 2-2. It was
They're
kind of...
actually playing Wolves.
Brighton are actually playing Wolves in the cup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
It's not great.
Okay, that's a pretty tough fixture actually. But yeah, Man United Spurs is one I got correct, and that means that I have actually taken the lead when it comes to scorelines this season. So finally, I have a lead against you, but you still have a 19-point lead when it comes to the results. So still got a lot of traction or a lot of stuff to gain on you in that regard. And maybe I can do that in this upcoming game week, because we have a lot of predictions for game week 22 as well. As always, we're doing these predictions each and every week. And yeah, let's just go through all the games for now. We have a midweek game week starting on Tuesday. And we have 5 matches on the Tuesday. Nottingham Forest against Arsenal. We've both gone with a 3-1 win for Arsenal there. Fulham Everton, I've gone with a 1-1 draw. I feel like Everton and Fulham just are... I don't know, haven't you drawn a lot lately? It feels like you've been drawing a lot lately.
It's either team wins normally.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't really pick between them, with Fulham at home and Everton being a slightly better side in my view in this match. So I went with 1-1. You went with a 2-1 win for your Everton, your favorite team, Everton. Luton against Brighton, we both had 2-1 for Brighton. Palace against Sheffield United, I actually had 1-1. I think Sheffield United have looked a bit better lately, but I do sort of get the Crystal Palace win there as well. But I think if Elise is still out injured, which is looking likely, I just think they lack the firepower, and Crystal Palace are in really bad form lately, so I think a draw here is something that Sheffield United could manage to get out of the game. But you've gone with a 2-0 Crystal Palace win there. And then the final game on Tuesday is Aston Villa against Newcastle, and we've both gone with a home win there for Aston Villa. I believe it's going to be a 3-1 win, and looking back at the past few fixtures for Aston Villa, maybe that's a bit... flattering for them, because they haven't really been scoring that much lately. You've gone with a more conservative 2-1 win for Aston Villa there. But going through those matches, which matches are the most interesting to you? I mean, the Everton match is probably the one that stands out to you because you're an Everton fan. But apart from that, any other matches that you're interested to see the results in?
Yeah, I think Villa and Newcastle, because that could be the sort of passing of the torch moment, because Newcastle wants to go back to where they were with a Champions League, Europa League sort of finish. Aston Villa are currently trying to get a Champions League spot, so it'll be interesting to see. This is the sort of game that Aston Villa have to win to have those sort of ambitions. And if Newcastle want to sort of rescue their season, this is yet another game that they'll have to try and make an impression on. So I think in terms of stakes, that's the one that is the most interesting.
Mm.
I just need Crystal Palace and Brighton to do me a favor in case we lose to Fulham or don't get maximum points. So, and of course, City in the next match day, or not match day, but next day. But yeah, I think Aston Villa and Newcastle is probably the one that has my most intrigue slash interest.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about Aston Villa and Newcastle is the fact that they faced each other in game week 1 and Newcastle beat them 5-1, which was kind of a crazy result in the end. I think it was kind of flattering as well that Newcastle won that game by that much. Harvey Barnes came on and scored. Cam Wilson came on and scored. They're both out injured now, I think, for this game as well. And yeah, I think Aston Villa looked actually pretty good in that game, especially offensively, even though they lost 5-1. And that has proven to be the case for the rest of the season because they've been absolutely fantastic for the rest of the season, Aston Villa. So yeah, looking forward to that game. I think it could be a pretty open game, even though I have 3-1 for Aston Villa there. I think I don't know, it's tough to see because Newcastle are conceding for fun lately and Aston Villa are not scoring lately. So it's going to be an interesting clash of styles there, I guess, in that game. Moving on to the Wednesday games, we have Man City against Burnley, and we've both gone with a resounding Man City win. I think we both expect City to just be absolutely fantastic now for the rest of the season, basically, with De Bruyne being back. Haaland playing some minutes against Burnley. He's probably not going to start, but he's going to come on and play a couple minutes. So yeah, I've gone with a 4-0 City win. You've gone with a 5-0 City win. So we're expecting big things against the Vincent Kompany, who returns to the Etihad, which is kind of a interesting notice there as well for that game. And Spurs against Brentford, we're expecting kind of a match filled with goals. Spurs have been really attacking this whole season under Postecoglou, and Brentford have been sort of there to be messed with as well when it comes to conceding goals. So I'm going with a 2-1, which is kind of conservative. I probably should have gone with a bigger scoreline there, but I think it's going to be a pretty tight game. So yeah, maybe I should have gone with a 3-2 instead. But you've gone with a 4-2 for Spurs in that game, which is fair enough as well. I think that could happen. Spurs is a team that could win any game 4-2, it feels like. And then finally, we have Liverpool against Chelsea, and we've both gone with a 3-1 Liverpool win there, even though Chelsea have been sort of good against the better teams this season. So I think that's also interesting. I think all these games are kind of interesting, so we could actually just go through all these because I think that's probably like the highlight day of the week, the Wednesday. Well, City Burnley we don't really have to talk about because we know City are going to destroy Burnley most likely. But Spurs, Brentford, and Liverpool, Chelsea. What are you looking forward to in these two games in particular?
Sorry, it just cut off. Can you say again?
The Spurs Brentford match and Liverpool Chelsea match. What are you looking forward to in particular in these two games?
I think with Spurs Brentford, it's I want to see what Richarlison can do. So that's sort of what I'm looking forward to, and Ivan Toney, of course, because I think both players will want to put teams on blast. So it'll be interesting just to see what sort of shoot off it will be. Obviously, if James Madison is back or even close to like half an hour, a minute, or even a start, would be very interesting to see. So that's sort of my takeaway from Spurs Brentford. It's just there's a lot of attacking players that I'm interested in keeping
Mm.
an eye out for. Obviously, I have Pedro Porro and stuff like that, and he's going to start and etc. But I think Ivan Toney just makes Brentford just that much better.
Yeah. Matthias Jensen is back
Obviously,
as well, which is something that's quite significant because he's been actually pretty good this season. But I'll talk more about him pretty soon as well.
yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
And from the Liverpool Chelsea game, it's just going to be interesting to see how these sort of because it's like Sterling coming back to play pool. It's going to be Palmer if he can keep up his good form, and obviously it's going to be such an emotionally charged game because this is going to be the first game after Klopp's pretty shocking decision. I did not see that coming at all.
First league game at
Uh,
least. They did
yeah,
beat Norwich today.
yeah. But it'll be the first league game,
Yeah,
so it'll be very interesting. It's going to be a completely different ball game in that regards because now this might give them the sort of um, firing up that they needed to try and actually go for the league win because
yeah,
they're like I said very early in our podcast, and that's why I like that we have video proof of them. I was one of the first people to say that they were a dark horse for the league, and fair enough. They're God damn it. I hate Liverpool, but yeah, they're taking the best of their opportunity. Obviously, Salah being out for AFCON and injury could be sort of the tipping point and might derail everything for them. But if Jota and Darwin continue to sort of find form and they still have Gakpo and Luis and all this type of things. So, and with Trent potentially back as well, it'll be interesting
yeah,
to see. I think Liverpool are just unfortunately just that bit stronger than Chelsea. Because Chelsea, like you mentioned, have been better in these sort of big six games, but I think the Anfield of it all is going to be the reason why they can't.
Yeah,
This is going to be the first time they like proper convincingly lose as well. So, um, unfortunate for my brother, unfortunate for me as an Evertonian, but yeah, I don't see. It'll be some highway robbery if Chelsea managed to win, and if they were to win, it would require Nkunku to all of a sudden not have a hip injury. So, yeah,
yeah. Apparently he's back in training now. Both him and Gusto are like sort of like
don't tempt
playing
me.
a little
Don't
bit.
tempt me.
No, yeah, you've tried that, and well, you got 9 points from one of the game weeks, so not too bad, I guess. But yeah, I think in general, I think also the thing you talk about with Klopp there as well, I think that's going to play a factor. Even though they did play against Norwich today, against David Wagner, who I think it was his best man at his wedding, which was kind of interesting. That was his first game
Yeah.
post the news that he's going to leave at the end of the season. The second best manager this week that has said that he's going to leave post season. By the way, Xavi, legend. But yeah, I'm not going to ask you to rate Klopp too much because I know you don't like him or Liverpool. But yeah, personally for me, kind of a bit of a hot take. But I think apart from Ferguson and Pep, I think he's the best Premier League manager of all time, apart from those two. But hey, that's just me.
It
Any
is.
rebuttal to that, or do we want to move on
Yeah,
to?
the fact that he went 6 years without anything happening. Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
I think if you look back at their, was it 18-19 season, they're one win away from beating. If they had beaten City that one game, they would be invincible Centurions. That's how close they
Yeah.
are to being both of those things that are held in such high regard. And yes, they didn't do that, and they did finish second. But any other season, they would have won the league. And then, what was it? This 2 seasons ago, 21-22, they're 2 wins away from being quadruple winners. So they're just there. It's just the fact that they came up against the best team of all time, and Man City, the best Premier League team of all time, I should say, because Barcelona are the best team of all time, obviously. But the best Premier League team of all time, and also like sadly one of the winningest Champions League teams of all time. They were also faced in the final, but we're not going to mention that team. But either way, that's one of my hot takes. I think it's better than Mourinho, especially because I don't like Mourinho, and I also think it's better than Wenger. Apart from that, don't think there's anyone you could really make a case for, probably in the Premier League. But either way, that's neither here nor there because that's not FPL related. But I think it's going to be an interesting thing to look out for in that game, Liverpool-Chelsea. And then the final match day, I guess, of the game week is the Thursday, 1st of February. And we have 2 matches, West Ham against Bournemouth. I go on with a 2-1 West Ham win. I think it's going to be a pretty close fought win there. I still back West Ham, but I do think Bournemouth are better than what they showed against Liverpool when they lost 4-0. But you apparently don't think so because you think Bournemouth are going to lose 3-0 to West Ham. Maybe aided by the fact that West Ham now have Calvin Phillips in the team. He's been signed on loan, and also Mohamed Kudus is back with West Ham after playing an AFCON for Ghana and going out. And we saw already what some Ghanaian players can do once they're back from AFCON. So yeah, I think that's going to count in West Ham's favour, but I don't think 3-0 is that achievable because I don't think West Ham have 3 goals in them. But you seem to have that thought. But the final game is Wolves against Man United, and we both actually backed Wolverhampton in that game. I've gone with a 2-0 win. I think Wolves is going to be the only team, apart from City, to keep a clean sheet this game week because I can't really see that many clean sheets in this game week in general. You have 3 clean sheets, I have 2 clean sheets in general for this game week, but you have a 2-1 win for Wolves against Man United, which would be justice for a game week 1 where Wolves really should have beaten Man United, to be fair. But these 2 matches, anything that stands out to you, anything you're looking for?
Yeah, no, I think it'll just be an interesting game games in general because Euro has been very good with Bournemouth lately, but I just Solanke's been kind of off, and I think West Ham are going to feel really hard done by with the Sheffield United result as well.
Oh,
So I think they're going to go guns a blazing at the Olympic Stadium. So
fingers crossed.
yeah, so I actually have a lot of belief that West Ham are going to comfortably win the game. Will they? We'll have to wait and see, but I have strong belief that it's not going to be that close of a game. Wolves, Man United, I just think Wolves perform really well in the sort of big matches, especially at home. So I feel like they got what it takes to win. I just giving Man United the benefit of the doubt because they have been scoring lately, and I think that's why they'll get a cheeky goal, and it'll probably the likes of like a Bruno or Rasmus Højlund who gets it.
Yeah, fair enough. It could happen. Yeah, I just think Man United offensively haven't really been the best. They haven't really created that many chances. But Højlund has been really lethal lately. So, and Anthony even scored now today against. He had to play against Newport County before he got his goal. But finally, he had his first goal in half a year or something.
Yeah, confidence is all that it takes to get you ticking again. So
yeah. And that's basically all of the fixtures in game week 22 and our predictions for those matches. If you guys watching have any other predictions, if you think we have gotten something completely wrong, any details we've missed, then please let us know in the comments. I think it's a pretty interesting game week in general. Like I said, I don't think there's that many clean sheets potential matches, but we'll see. That's always hard to predict, really. Next up, we have a little quick look at the fixture ticker because there are some pretty interesting game weeks now included in the next 5 game weeks because we have game week 25, which is going to be a double game week for Man City, Liverpool, Luton, and Brentford. And then we have game week 26, which is going to be a blank for Liverpool, who doubled the week before, Luton, who doubled the week before, Tottenham, who don't double the week before, and Chelsea, who don't double the week before. And as you can see, that's reflected in Spurs and Chelsea being quite near the bottom of the fixture ticker in terms of the best available matches for the next few game weeks. So yeah, is this also something that went into your thinking on your wildcard? You had one Chelsea player, 2 Spurs players, you had 2 Brentford players.
I mean, I'll be completely honest. I had no idea about these things because they didn't get revealed until more recently. But of course, it doesn't hurt my case for wildcarding. But of course, there was the potential. We were always in the know that a lot of news would get leaked, or not leaked, but a lot of news would be sort of foretold by the time of the midweek matches. So yeah, it just feels sort of my decision of doing a wild card. So yeah, I feel pretty comfortable knowing that I can fix a lot of things in the present, but also future proof as well if I just plan it correctly.
Yeah. Something that's not reflected in this fixture ticker though is game week 29, which is going to be probably the biggest blank game week of the whole season, and you don't even have your free hit like we mentioned earlier, so you sort of have to plan for that as well. And the sort of bad part about that is the fact that Spurs, Burnley, Brentford, and Chelsea are actually 14 that are looking decently likely to play in that game week. Potentially, it remains to be seen. Aston Villa and Chelsea do have that replay in the FA Cup, so that could go either way. It could be Aston Villa West Ham, which is going to be the game that is going to blank in game 29, or it could be Spurs Chelsea against Arsenal, which could blank in that game week, depending on who goes through out of Chelsea and Aston Villa, and if they beat Leeds, I guess, in the next round after that. But yeah, so that's kind of an interesting conundrum for most managers, the fact that the teams that you need players from in game 29 actually don't have the best matches coming up. But looking at Spurs, they actually do have decent matches. It's just the fact that they are blanking in 26 that is the big problem there, because Brentford at home seems like a decent fixture. 4-2 is your prediction for that game, so especially offensively they should have some points. Pedro Porro as well as an offensive-minded fullback. Everton away, which is, to be fair, a tough fixture. I think you would say as well. Everton have proven that they can keep a clean sheet against the bigger teams as well, so I think that's a tough fixture, even though people are saying that it's an easy fixture. Brighton as well, it's low-key kind of a tough fixture. Both Everton and Brighton have sort of like the grey color, which means it's like 3 out of 5, basically in the middle in terms of difficulty. But Brighton have actually been pretty solid defensively as well lately, so I don't think that's going to be too much of an easy game either. Wolves at home should be decent, but again, Wolves is a team that could show up against the big 6 teams, so yeah, I don't know. People are saying that Spurs have fantastic fixtures, and they do have pretty good fixtures, especially game 27 through game 29. But I think there's a case to be made to not have Spurs players before game 26 and then bring them back in for game 27 and beyond. But obviously, if you already have someone like Pedro Porro, especially if you have a lot of value tied into him, then that's a different matter. I wouldn't sell him if that was the case, for example. But yeah, those are just some of my thoughts on Spurs at least. Looking more at the top of the fixture ticker, we have Man City, who are most likely going to blank in 29. I think it's like a 93% chance that they're going to blank in game 29 or something. But until then, they have really good fixtures, as you can see from this fixture ticker. Their underlying numbers have actually been the best for the last 6 matches. They're not in the top 3 for either expected goals or expected goals conceded, but yeah, really good matches from Man City. And yeah, we're going to get to your team pretty soon, so you're going to reveal then who your favorite players are from City. But if you want to give us like 4 or 5 options from City that you are thinking about potentially, who would that be? And rank them as well if you want to.
Yeah, I guess the 4 players would be Haaland, KDB, Foden, and Kyle Walker.
Yeah.
And I guess it'd be in that order as well.
Yeah.
Maybe even Walker higher than Foden, because obviously both Haaland and KDB sort of dwarf Foden's points.
Playing time at least,
But
maybe.
I think just scoring and stuff like that, KDB is kind of always wants the ball because of course he's the sort of magician. So I think in terms of touches and stuff like that, like what I used to say about Nkunku and Palmer. So yeah, but I still think Foden's a great prospect and stuff. And considering KDB's injury record, you could even swap the two as a current. But once KDB is like completely back and playing every game, then of course he's the better option out of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the 4 standout picks as well. And I have a really hard time looking into whether I should get De Bruyne or if I should get Walker, basically, because I already have Foden, so he's an easy get for me. But Holland's definitely someone that's coming into my team. Alvarez is going to be sold to do that. I don't think Alvarez is going to be that good of a player going forward. And he hasn't really impressed that much the past like 10, 12 game weeks either when he's been playing every single game week. So yeah, I think it's sort of out of the question once Holland is back, especially. But yeah, I think those 4 are like the standout picks, and it just remains to be seen. It depends on your squad and where you need to replace people and stuff, whether you go with De Bruyne and if you have the money available and all that stuff. So it's very much team dependent. The next team on the list is actually Aston Villa, which is kind of interesting because Ollie Watkins is someone that has been pretty disappointing for a while now as well. But they do have good fixtures, and we know Aston Villa are still a good team. And even the home fixtures that they have, and we know they are good at home. Newcastle at home and Man United at home. We both expected them to beat Newcastle at home. I had the 3-1 win there. Man United as well is a team that I could easily beat by quite a lot. So I think the fixtures are quite enticing for Aston Villa. But yeah, what do you think about Watkins in general? Are you sure about leaving him out on your wildcard, or do you still consider him? What's your thought process in general with Watkins and looking at his fixtures especially?
Yeah, I mean, he's unbelievably streaky, right? So once he does get the goals in, these are sort of the matches you'd hope that he has. Because if he scores against Newcastle, it's probably they're going to beat Sheffield United away. Man United are a leaky faucet, so he'd probably score in that game. Then Fulham, who are garbage, yeah. And Nottingham Forest, who are kind of hit and miss. So could I see him scoring in all those games? Yeah, but my biggest issue with him now is that he only gets a goal at most. It's never like a mega haul
I guess
or anything
Brighton,
like that.
apart from that.
Yeah, of course. But that was even then, his XGA and XG were completely low, and he completely smashed it out of the park. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, he's always going to be a good pick, especially if you have like a conundrum of which players to pick and etc. I feel he's the safest Aston Villa pick right now. He'd be number 1 for sure.
And they might actually also play in Game Week 29. It just depends on a different fixture. I can't remember exactly what that is either. But he has like a sort of like a 50-50 chance of playing, I guess, in that game week. So yeah, he could be a decent long-term pick. But I also see the reason why people are selling him, because he's been pretty disappointing lately. For me, I think I'm just going to give him this Newcastle game at home in the next game week, because I think he could actually hold in that game like he did last season against Newcastle, which was a better Newcastle team defensively especially. So I'll be interested to see him this game week, and I actually have him as potentially a captain's option as well for this game week, but we'll see. Brighton, we've talked a little bit about already with Estepinian, Joe Pedro, 2 really good picks from them. Pascal Gross hasn't really looked the best pick again now after he's been quite a popular FPL pick. I don't know, what do you think about Gross? Do you think he's sort of like a false idol, or do you think he could potentially get back into the points again?
I think he can get back into the points again, but it's just the quality of the players that are back and etc. is the reason why you'd feel that they're the safer picks in that regards. Like we know what Mitsumo can do. We obviously know what Ansu Fati can do. We know what Ferguson can do. We already know how Pedro can do. We don't know what the Serbi is going to do because he fucking rotates everyone out of the team, which is like why him being a big favorite for the Barcelona job is pissing me off because that sounds like someone who would just rotate my entire team every week, and I wouldn't want that. It's like, oh, it's so obvious to play Frankie de Jong this week, but not. You know what? I'm gonna let
Oriol Romeo.
Yeah, play as a cab. Why the fuck not? Because I'm a genius. So he needs to stop buying his own hype so much. But yeah, I think there's so many awesome picks. Estupinian is that G. Like for me, he's the standout pick from Brighton for sure. I think Estupinian, first player on my sheet, and then it just depends on.
He's even taking set pieces now from Gross.
Yeah. So I think Gross is like dead last on my list of players because I think I'd rank it probably at this rate Estupinian, Carl Pedro, and Mitoma, just because I know that Mitoma is he usually plays like every week when he's back. So I think that would be my pick. Evan Ferguson should probably try and ask for a transfer because at this rate, I have no idea what's going on with him. He just doesn't get the minutes, and I don't even think it's because of Juan Pedro, because sometimes Danny Welbeck just is starting every game. Why is Danny Welbeck starting over both Ferguson and Juan Pedro almost every game now? It's starting to do my nut in because I'm not even a Brighton fan, and I feel so invested with that.
Yeah, we'll see. It would actually be fun if we took over Barcelona because you've been pretty much every single podcast you've been talking about the Serbi. But yeah, we'll see what happens. He does rotate a lot, and we know Pep used to do that as well, even more back in the day. But he actually wins titles and stuff. So yeah, we'll see if the Serbi can reach anywhere near that level of being a manager. But yeah. The next team on the list is actually an interesting one in Crystal Palace because I think it's such a big missed opportunity that Michael Olise is still out injured. Because I think if he was back for this game against Sheffield United, I think he'd be probably my favorite like differential midfielder pick. Because I think Crystal Palace are just waiting to have Eze and Olise back at the same time. They played really well when both those players have been available at the same time, but they just never have been. Olise has been injured for the start of the season, then Eze got injured when Olise came back, and now Olise is injured again. So yeah, I think that's a major missed opportunity there. But if there are some news all of a sudden on the press conference for Crystal Palace that Olise is back, I think he's a cheeky differential in midfield. But yeah, Eze has also been sort of like a semi optional purchase from Crystal Palace. Is he someone that interests you at all, or do you think just Crystal Palace are in such a bad moment currently that you're not looking into getting Eze?
I think it's weird because I would have said Eze regardless would have been a good pick, but there's something's not gelling with them. I don't know if it's because maybe Hodgson isn't the right man for the job, or it's the injuries that's causing this. But they've been in a weird funk lately. So personally, I think I'd wait. But matches wise, like Sheffield United, yes. Brighton away is not the easiest. Chelsea are probably going to beat them. Everton away can go either or for them. And then they got Burnley. So it's like, it's nice fixtures and all, but when they're misfiring as it is, it kind of doesn't, it feels like a risk that I'm not willing to take at current rate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. So yeah, I'd also be more interested in Elise. I think he's just been better than Eze this season as well. Like he was really good when he came back, had a lot of points, and even took a penalty when Eze was on the pitch as well. So I think that was an interesting tidbit as well there. But yeah, Fulham are actually like the best team on this list that have a fixture in Gaming 29, most likely. Oh, yeah, they do actually have a confirmed fixture against Spurs in 29, which is not the best fixture, I guess, but anyone of interest from Fulham at all? Raul Jimenez is a pretty cheap priced striker, so if you want a third striker, maybe him. Or do you think, nah, Fulham is just a stay away because they have Marco Silva as a manager?
I think it's very difficult to dictate where the points are going to come from them. So, like, I don't think Andreas Pereira's having the most effective season.
He's
I
not even
don't
starting
think,
most games, I think, no.
yeah. And I think Jimenez is actually not the worst shout because
Yeah.
it seems like everything's going through him. Like the minute he's like either injured or red carded or whatever it is, everything just goes to hell. So yeah, I think Jimenez is the best option out of them. Potentially, if you see like a really, really cheap defender that plays all the time, they can stash as like a Tavares replacement in my case. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sort of the only thing that I really see.
Yeah, they do have Anthony Robinson, who's actually had a pretty good season in general. Like
Yeah.
he's actually become like a proper footballer now and not just a speed merchant. So
Yeah.
he's
Um,
someone, and he plays every week as well. Even though they have both Castagna and Tete as well, who have been pretty good.
yeah.
So he's actually like not the worst option for 4.4 as well. So someone to take note of at least if you are planning for Gaming 29 and yeah, and you need to. And you need to do that. But yeah, those are basically the 5 top teams in the fixture ticker. So yeah, I think we've talked enough about the teams with the good fixtures here. So let's move on to the next segment of the podcast, which is going to be the weekly wildcard draft. And this has not been changed since I did the video on Thursday. So it's still the same squad that I had. But this is basically my initial, at least, suggestion for what I would do if I was on a wildcard. Obviously, this is a bit different to your wildcard because you don't have the free hit to use, so you have to plan a bit differently for when it comes to Gaming 29 and stuff like that. So for you, it's probably more viable to have the players that play into 29, like the Spurs players, like Porro, Richarlison, those type of guys, and even the Brentford guys like Tony and Fleckins, who you might actually sell as well. But yeah, this is the team that I came up with for this week wildcard draft. Again, I had Jota last week, so this is not a knee-jerk thing. I actually had him as one of my picks for the wildcard draft if you did wildcard in Game 21. So hopefully some of you guys watched and did that. I know, especially like looking at the top scorers in the FPL Scope Mini League this week, pretty much like I think 12 out of the 15 highest players or something wildcard this week. So yeah, maybe some people watched and had my wildcard from last week because that was a pretty good score with Gabriel and Jota especially scoring a lot of points. But yeah, for me it was tough to pick strikers. I think Watkins is someone that I'm unsure about. Solanke is still someone that I'm unsure about as well. And Joe Pedro I think is actually the best striker option currently with Haaland still being injured. Haaland would obviously come in next week for either Solanke or Watkins probably. If he's back fit, because this team is not using the team value up at all. I think it actually has enough money to go from Jota to Salah and Watkins to Haaland if need be, if both those guys are ready for Game 25. So I've kept that in mind for this team as well. That's why I have some cheap players like Garnacho, for example, in midfield. But yeah, looking at this team, any inspiration you can draw from this from your own team? Do you think it's a bit different with your situation? Any players that stand out to you? Any players that I rank too highly? I have Foden as number 1 pick. Maybe that's a bit too high. I don't know. What do you think about the rankings and the players in general?
Yeah, yeah. Considering number 14 was such a crazy important cog to Keemo's plans, it's nice to see. Um,
Bradford.
yeah, I think it's perfectly fine. The only sort of question marks I have is Watkins and Solanke when Darwin, who's been sort of decent and has the good fixtures and stuff, I think should like he's scored all of us and is a dog
Yeah.
piece of shit, dog shit sort of striker. Still got 10 and 10 for the season and all this type of stuff. And credit where credit's due. He's stepping up when Salah's gone. So
Yeah,
I think
my thinking with Darwin is the fact that I do kind of want to
eventually,
keep that third Liverpool spot open in case Salah is back earlier than expected. I think that's sort of the thing.
sure.
And also for the next two fixtures, I think Watkins and Solanke have slightly better fixtures. They do have that one like dark blue fixture. Watkins against Sheffield United away and Solanke against Nottingham Forest at home. Solanke scored a hat-trick against Nottingham Forest away this season as well.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much my thinking with that. I think Darwin is someone you can bring in Game Week 24 if it looks like Salah's going to miss 24 and 25 especially. I think that's when you pounce on Darwin. But yeah, it is a spot open for him. I think he is a really good pick as well. He was basically the last striker that I removed when I came up with Pedro, Watkins, Solanke. But yeah.
And also Erling Burling, the one on.
Yeah.
So I
He's
think
gonna
he's
replace either Watkins or Solanke most likely. I mean, that's the tough part. Maybe you can actually go a week longer without Haaland. They do have Brentford away, which is, I guess, a pretty good fixture. But Joe Pedro against Palace at home, Watkins against Sheffield United away, Solanke against Nottingham Forest at home. You could potentially just survive that week as well. It depends on captaincy as well. If you do prefer Haaland as captaincy shout, then definitely do that transfer. But yeah, that's also something that I'm considering because we don't really know what the minutes with Haaland either because he's been out for a long while now. And we've seen De Bruyne be sort of rested a bit now since he came back from injury. So I don't know if Haaland is such a slam dunk straight away, but yeah.
yeah, that's fair enough. Other than that, I mean, the mission of Saka is obviously there, but
Yeah.
I get it. He's sort of been hit and miss lately, so yeah. But other than that, I have no qualms with the team. I think Kudus is also a fun addition. But yeah, I think it's just a question of Solanke and Watkins because they've
Yeah.
kind of been misfiring lately, but future matches do dictate that they do deserve a spot on the team, but it's a bit alarming considering at least Watkins is quite expensive and he's ranked number 9. So
Yeah. I mean, that is just the case. Like, I think if I was actually wildcarding this week and I would do this wildcard, the plan would probably be to have Haaland and Darwin by 24-25, but just for the next two fixtures and just see who performs well. If I need Darwin, if Salah is back or not, if Haaland is back to play 100% or not. I think Watkins and Solanke are just nice placeholders and sort of like safeguards against the fact that they are pretty highly owned as well. So yeah, I think that's just my thinking with those two guys. But yeah, as you can see from the rankings, number 9 and number 10, I'm not quite certain about them in my squad. You also mentioned Saka, and I think now with basically getting confirmed pretty much, or yeah, it's looking pretty likely at least that Arsenal will play in Game 29. That strengthens the case for Saka, who doesn't even blank in 26 either. So maybe Kudus to Saka would be something that I would have to do there. That's also something that I would consider. Also potentially, it depends on Salah obviously, but Jota could also be sacrificed if Salah is back. But I think Jota is just going to play now. What do you reckon with Jota? Even if Salah comes back and is fully healthy for Game 24 against Burnley, do you still think Jota will be in the team with Darwin as well? Do you think Diaz is the one to drop out, or do you think it's going to be a rotation risk for Jota?
it depends. I think Jota is playing too well lately to not be the one to play, so I reckon it'll be Jota on the left, Salah on the right, and Darwin down the middle. I think Luis Diaz has been a bit too quiet lately, so it's likely, yeah, knowing Jota, he'll get in a hot streak and get injured. So
Yeah, it's usually what it does. But yeah, scored another nice goal again today against Norwich. Really nice finish,
yeah,
which he has proven that he can do. Scored 2 goals and 1 assist from 0.53 expected goal moment, I think. Again, which is quite the overperformance, but that's sort of what he can provide as well. So I really like Jota. The other spot is Garnacho. I'm not quite sold on him. He's my 15th pick for a reason. He's sort of like the last throw-in guy. It's basically just because he's cheap and he has decent fixtures in those game weeks where you need him especially. But I think I did mention briefly earlier that my namesake, Matthias Jensen, is actually someone to consider, because I was actually looking at his points per match so far this season, because he's been injured as well. People haven't really taken notice of that. Like, he's another one of those injuries for Brentford, which also strengthens Tony's case, the fact that Jensen is back now, and that's going to help them even more offensively. And then Wembo's going to be back at some point as well. So I think they will be strengthened offensively there in general. But looking at his points per match, he was actually pretty nicely comparable to a lot of other players. Like, he's basically the same points per match as Richarlison this season. Sure, that's due to Richarlison having some sub appearances and stuff as well, but pretty much on par with Pascal Gross, not that far away from Kudus, better than Diaby, better than Kulusevski, better than Esse, better than Bruno and Rashford by quite a distance as well, better than Mitoma as well. So I think he's actually been an underrated prospect so far this season, and he's only like 5.4, I think. So I think I'm going to present a new weekly wildcard draft team on my team selection video tomorrow, and I think actually Jensen will be in there, because Brentford obviously have that double game week in game week 26 or game week 25. They don't blank in game week 26, and they don't blank in game week 29, so they have more fixtures than anyone in those game weeks. So I think he's actually a nice differential shot, but I don't know. Do you think that's something that you could consider potentially as well? I think Brentford is a team that, especially for you who doesn't have a free hit, Brentford players should probably come into your mind. But what do you think of Jensen?
What's his full price?
5.4, I think he is.
Oh, it's not bad.
It's pretty cheap. Yeah. Could be. We'll actually look at your team. Should we look at your team straight away? Actually.
Yeah, sure.
Because currently you have sort of Neto in that spot, and this was also chosen before we saw Wolves' draw. They do face Brighton, but I think they play Bournemouth in game 29, if I'm not mistaken, and it looks like Bournemouth are going to make it through to the quarterfinals. So most likely Neto and Wolves blank in that game week. So I haven't even listed him as a other option there, Jensen, but it's just something that I thought about pretty late, right before the podcast actually. But yeah, him for Neto sort of makes sense. They're sort of the same price, and you have someone nice to have on the bench for the future. But obviously, you could have, I don't know. He's one of the Brentford options I would consider at least. But either way, Jensen, do you buy him or not?
Yeah, I mean, if I can afford him, I wouldn't see why not. Especially as a player to stash on the bench, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't want him just as a backup. Yeah.
But then, just talk about your team in general. You have 5.7 million in the bank, even with Haaland in the squad, which means that you could actually get Salah as well in this team, I think.
Yeah.
Potentially, which would be kind of interesting to see. But yeah, what is like the main players that you like to have in Game 22? Who are like the locked players, or the players that you really like the look of? Not necessarily locked, but like players that you really want to have in general.
Obviously, KDB, Foden, Haaland because of the game against Burnley.
Yep.
Jota because he's just in good form.
Yep.
Pedro Porro because Pedro Porro is Pedro Porro. And like some of the other players are a bit iffy. Like while Pedro is great unless he's rotated out and then gets subbed on, but even then I see his potential of scoring still being quite high even as a sub. So I like this entire team. After all, I'm not getting all these players just based on today. I'm also getting them based on future matches and stuff like that too.
Yep.
Which is why I only have one Chelsea player instead of 3 and all this type of stuff. I just think Palmer's too good to not continue having until the inevitable. But generally speaking, pretty happy with the team. I think it's the right mixture of players and right form and everything like that as well. So, yeah, it's nice to see Dubravka somehow join the team instead of having shitty ass fucking Flecken. But then maybe I should bring back Flecken considering the fact that there's game weeks and stuff going forward. But
yeah.
I hate him so much. So.
Yeah, I think personally, I think Areola would probably be the one to be dropped out in place of Flecken, probably, and just have Dubravka. I don't know. I still think Newcastle will find their form again defensively at some point. Probably not in this next game against Aston Villa, but after that, they have some decent matches and they have a lot more rest now than they had at certain parts of the season so far. So, but yeah, I still think that's obviously the big issue with Ariola Dubravka. I think that's been my goalkeeper pairing for a long while now in terms of the ideal goalkeeper pairing, I think, in FPL. But both of them are probably blanking in 29. Like I mentioned, maybe West Ham get to play in 29 and you can keep that same goalkeeper pairing, but we don't really know that yet until we see Aston Villa either get knocked out or go through to the next round. Because if Aston Villa go through to the quarterfinals, the West Ham fixture in game 29 between Villa and West Ham will be a blank, so you wouldn't have a goalkeeper in that case with those two players in there. But at the same time, not having a goalkeeper for one game week isn't the worst. Like, it's only 6 points at most, or 12 points at most if you're lucky with saves and all that stuff. But that's very rare as well. If you look back at like the scores from your goalkeepers throughout the season, anyone of you guys watching as well, probably not going to have that many game weeks where the goalkeeper was that important to have for any particular game week. So yeah, maybe that's not the biggest issue in the world either.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in general, your team, if I want to comment on it, I think the defense is pretty much locked for you. Gabriel, Estepinian, and Pedro Porro, they've all been performing really well for you. You have a lot of value tied into Pedro Porro, and he plays in Game 29 as well, so he makes all the sense in the world to just keep, I think, for you. Gabriel, obviously, fantastic. He also plays potentially in Game 29 if Chelsea go out. So he's also a nice pick. Saka has actually been removed from your team, which could come back to bite you in terms of value, because I think you've lost a bit of value if you sold him already. Because yeah, he doesn't blank now in Game 29. Potentially again, if Chelsea get knocked out against Aston Villa, but yeah, he's also someone you should consider, and you're obviously probably doing that as well, because I know you're a huge fan of Saka in terms of FPL, but lately hasn't been the best. So is that why you've dropped him? Have you lost faith in Saka finally now after being so true to him for the last 2 seasons?
Yeah, I don't think it's even just losing. Um, I don't think it's losing even faith in him. I think it's just that Arteta's playing him to the ground.
Yeah.
I think he's clearly injured and still playing through injury. Like, it's like sort of like it's not that bad of an injury where he can't
Yeah.
play, but I think they're just making it worse by not resting him. Like, you're playing some dog shit team. Of course, us FPL uh, fans and etc. want him to play every minute of those sort of matches. But if there's a match where he can get rested, just rest him. I don't understand why it's like we must play him in the FA Cup. We must play him in this cup. We must play him in the Champions League when we're already qualified. We must play him against Burnley or whatever random ass fucking game that they would have won without him. Just rest him because he's clearly not up to speed, and it's evident. It's evident in just seeing him play. He's not playing with the same explosiveness that he's known for. So yeah, I think that's just been a weird thing because it's sort of like he's not addressed it. Arsenal haven't addressed it, and they just keep playing him. And I think it's just a bit of a shame. I also just think that unfortunately for the next couple of matches, a lot of these other teams have higher potential, which is why I'm going with that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really say much wrong about your midfield. I really like Neto as well. He scored again today in the cup as well. So especially if he did play in Game 29, he would be a really good pick in general. And then De Bruyne and Foden seem like really good picks, especially now against Burnley. It makes sense for you on a wildcard to really go for that match when a lot of people can't do that. And Palmer obviously has to be in the team because he's just such good value. So yeah, I totally get the reason for not having Saka, and obviously I dropped him in my weekly wildcard draft as well, so it makes sense. But I think he's always going to be an option because we know his potential as a penalty taker and potential good goal scorer and assister for Arsenal as well. So he makes sense. You also have a sort of similar conundrum with your forwards, because I think there are a lot of good forwards in the game currently. We've talked a bit about Watkins and Solanke maybe not being the best picks because you don't have them in your squad. You have Darwin and Haaland, like we mentioned. Haaland, obviously it depends on his availability. I think you could potentially go with someone else for one game week or potentially even two, rather than Haaland here. But you might as well also just have him if he's going to play a lot of minutes. But it seems like he's just going to have a little bit of a cameo against Burnley, so I probably would go with someone else for that one game week myself. But speaking of potential one game week punts or potentially even players that you could have for the long-term future, I have two strikers that I want to discuss as well. Ivan Toney, who you brought in as a captain last week. We saw how good he was. We talked about how he looks like he didn't miss a beat. And obviously we also talked about how Brentford have so many matches. Like they play the double game weekend and they don't blank in either 26 or 29. And then the other one is Alexander Isak, who's also another, obviously, compatriot of yours from Sweden, who you are a big fan of. I'm a big fan of. I always said he's better than Haaland, even though Haaland is Norwegian. And I'm Norwegian and not Swedish. But yeah, Isak and Tony, are they people you're considering, or do you want to stick with the strikers that you have?
I mean, obviously, I had Tony, but sort of the matches going forward kind of suck. Eventually, they become easier, but
Yeah, tough
it's.
fixtures.
I mean, they're second to lot. Like, yeah, it's not looking good, bro. Like Liverpool and City as your double game week. Is it? Is it? Yeah, it is them
It is,
too.
yeah, 25.
And they
Liverpool
win
have City
both
away.
games, and Tony scores a hat trick in both.
I
So,
mean, Tony has
um,
has a decent record against the bigger teams, at least.
yeah, yeah, of course, he tends to, and they always tend to get penalties against them. So, um,
They did beat City twice last season. The only team to
yeah,
beat them twice.
yeah, and exactly when I had gotten rid of him, he got a brace. So, yeah, I think they're both in consideration and stuff like that, but I have to optimize according to what the best fixtures are, and I think Liverpool and City obviously have better ones. So that's why I've gone with those two. And Joao Pedro is just an easy player to have because he's so cheap.
Yeah. I think Pedro Alternative is the one we talked about with Raul Jimenez for a bit cheaper even than Pedro, because he plays, again, the Game Week 29 fixture that we need players for, or you need players for. But yeah, I sort of get why you also have Darwin and Holland just in the team already. For that reason, the fact that you're wildcarding and you don't have a free hit, you basically need to save your future transfers. You can't really do the same as with my weekly wildcard draft, basically, where I have players with transferring in Darwin and Holland in mind, because you need to have all your transfers available so you can get a team for Game Week 29, basically. So yeah, you might as well just have the players that you're going to have for 24 and 25 already. Yeah, you're shaking your head. Is it?
No, just Travis Kelsey is just playing out of his mind. He just scored a
Oh,
crazy touchdown. And of
NFL.
course, T Swift is at the stadium as well. So he's playing up to the crowds, my friend. It's just fun to see.
Yeah, the NFL School Podcast.
Yes.
Wow, that's a fun game. Egypt are also playing now, by the way. Salah
Yeah.
might go out. Guinea actually beats Equatorial Guinea, so that's going to be the quarterfinal opponents for Egypt and Salah if they go through and if they beat Dr. Congo. Obviously, I say Dr. Congo. Obviously, if you're watching this, you already know the results, so that's not going to be too much of interest to you. But speaking of Liverpool, actually, there's a third Liverpool player on your team. He's hidden there on the Tavares spot on the bench, third bench for this game week at least, against Chelsea at home. But Konate, he's been playing a lot lately, and he's been stepping up and been really amazing as a general player. FPL-wise, not so much. Hasn't really gotten that many points. He's gotten a clean sheet here and there. But he's also proven that he has a bit of a goal threat as well in past seasons, especially in the Champions League. I think he scored twice in the group stages of the Champions League last season. I think he's a pretty nice differential pick if you don't have the money for Trent as your lights are going out. So yeah, Konate, is he someone that you're really considering? Is he locked in your team? Is he someone that was just like a throwaway guy to be the Tavares spot guy? Konate, what's your thinking with him? And also compared to Trent, and who's like 3 million more expensive than him, what is your thought process with Trent or Konate or someone else in that spot?
I mean, Konate could easily change simply because if Salah comes back earlier, I'd then have to get rid of Jota, which I probably would do, to be honest, because Salah, again, it becomes like a Salah will be the main focal point and stuff like that. So why
Yeah.
would you go for? Um, so why would you go for Jota when Salah is the focal point and cost gajillions more? But it's going to be tough. I just think Konate is just such a cheap enabler, so it's
Mm.
the main reason why I have him. I just don't think that playing against Chelsea is the best time to play him, so that's why I benched him. I could bench Palmer, but he'll probably get 18 points. So,
Yeah, I do not advise benching Palmer, and
ever
you
again.
as well,
So,
obviously, because you did the same thing.
yeah. So I just generally speaking think that Konate is a cheap
Yeah,
enabler, easy to stash as well because they are, like you said, he can get benched sometimes, but I think he was brought in because I personally think it should be him and Van Dyke playing together or him and Joe Gomez playing together, and I think eventually it will be him and Joe Gomez playing together because I don't know how much time Van Dyke has in him anymore. So
yeah.
we'll have to wait and see because he'll likely come to Barcelona on a free transfer when he's washed up. So yeah,
He'll follow Klopp to Barcelona.
yeah, potentially.
Yeah, but yeah, that's basically your team for now. I'm assuming it's going to change because that usually happens as well with your plans
Yeah,
before the game week. But yeah, we got some news today actually, so it's pretty fresh. All the news and all the different implications for Game Week 29 and beyond that stuff. So
yeah,
obviously that's going to come into play and that's going to make some changes to your team. I
of
think
course.
Brentford in general is going to be a team that you sort of have to target just so you can stash them in the tougher games and then have them for the, it's a tough double game week. It is a double game week, so they do get at least 4 points for playing. And then also have them for Game Week 29, where a lot of people blank. So I think Brentford is going to come into your team, and which is sort of the same story as your first wildcard this season. If you go back to Game Week 4, you tripled up on Brentford with with Flecken in goal, Tony up front, and then obviously Wissa also up front. Didn't you do that, or did you only double up? Oh, Wissa is a
No, I
midfielder.
had
Wissa is a midfielder in this, so Wissa midfield.
Mbuemo
Oh, and Mbuemo obviously. And Mbuemo midfield and Wissa as a striker. Yeah,
as a
that's how it
forward.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, as a forward. So Wissa is not someone you're going to go go with this time.
never,
No, never again.
never.
Yeah, do you think Brentford is the team that you could target, or is the fixtures too off-putting for you?
I think the fixtures are personally too off-putting, and if I need to do an emergency transfer of if a striker is like doing poorly, then yeah, I could easily just get Tony in.
Yeah. Wissa is actually playing now for Congo against Egypt, so maybe knocks out Salah. We'll see about that.
Yeah,
That's also a thing. Salah, again, you did mention you could sell Jota to buy him, so I guess you already addressed it, so maybe you don't need to talk about that too much. But
yeah.
yeah, let's move on to Chemo's current plans. He is not on the wildcard, as far as I know, at least. Maybe he's going to wildcard, but I don't think he should, to be honest, looking at his team. I think he has a decent team. In general, it's just the question of Salah. Maybe you need to sell him, and Chemo is probably, as an Egyptian, most Egyptians are not that happy with Salah at the moment. We'll see what happens with Salah in general in Egypt. But he might be someone that you have to sell. And Chemo as well, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, he doesn't have enough money to do Alvarez to Holland, which would be his move to do. But he does have only 2 City players currently, so he could sell Watkins and keep Alvarez for one more game. We can then bring in Darwin, I guess, for Alvarez eventually. That could also be something that he does to get Holland back in. But I think Salah out, especially for Chemo, and he's not going to be happy with Salah if he does go out, or if Egypt do go out of the African Cup of Nations. So selling him for either De Bruyne or Jota, who are like 2 of the most popular players in FPL currently, seems like a good idea because it both gives you a really nice player for the upcoming game weeks in De Bruyne or Jota, and it also gives you enough money to get Holland and potentially also Trent in for Trippier as well. So yeah, if you were in Chemo's position, what would you do you think?
I think the Jota move seems like the more reasonable thing at the end of the day because yeah, De Bruyne's great and stuff like that. But you know for a fact that Jota's going to start, so you might as well bring him in for coverage. Salah, you could always bring back. You have more than enough money to bring him back as well. So just do it, is my opinion on the matter. You don't know if Salah could get worse or better, sure, but I think until we know for a fact, just get rid of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the sensible player as well. If you, especially for someone like Kimo who doesn't have a full starting bench with Chimikas also injured, that's also something that he should look to address at some point. Chimikas to Walker or Estepinian, for example.
It's probably going to be Dawson, but who knows?
Who knows what Kimo will do? But he could actually get use of Branthwaite this week, the transfer that he did last week. So maybe it's not the worst if he can get a 15-pointer against Fulham. And I know you would be hoping for that at least, because that means he scores and keeps a clean sheet. So maybe that happens with Branthwaite. But that's Kimo's team. It's also interesting with the two Newcastle players, Trippier and Gordon. Not the best fixture this week against Aston Villa, but they do get good fixtures afterwards. So yeah, Gordon is actually someone that has been sort of just left in a lot of people's teams. Do you think you would just keep him at this point if you had him still? Is he also someone that you're considering potentially on a wildcard, or is he just out of the picture because Newcastle have been bad? I mean, offensively they've been pretty good. But what do you think of Gordon?
Good at home, shit away. So I think there's better options going forward, especially because there's a variety of teams that are in sort of like a better stint right now. So that includes like you know, Jota, this, that, all these sort of players that are like only a million more or something like that that he should
2
target.
million more from Jota.
Yeah, I mean, even switching Gordon for Jensen or something like that to save more money towards maybe swapping someone else out could also work as well. I think I don't hate Gordon as a pick. I just think that there are better options out there,
Yeah.
and like an Eze or a Michael Elise as well as a differential pick if he comes back in time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think Gordon is the perfect sort of player to have because I think it's easy to move away from him, right? While Saka was a difficult decision for me. Foden's been has the matches to back up. Palmer's just been too good to even consider getting rid of, and obviously Salah's not playing, so I think Gordon is like sort of an easy target to go away from to try and enable everything else. So yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying if, for example, Egypt get knocked out and we get some news pre-deadline about Salah potentially being back earlier than expected, you could look to save money from going from Gordon to someone cheaper, so you can have enough money to do Alvarez to Haaland next week, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or would Trippier be someone that you would like rather look to downgrade to someone like Walker or Estepinian? Because that could also save you a lot of money.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Trippier, especially if the Bayern thing ends up happening still, obviously then.
Yeah.
And I think Bayern are persistent, so I think they'll try again.
Yeah. That might,
Yeah, they did
still be
get
true.
they did get Sasha Bowie, right, at the end of the day, but
Yeah.
I still think they'll want Trippier because that's so like Sasha Bowie is good, but he's not Trippier good offensively, and they kind of like that offensive right back. So it remains to be seen.
Yeah. We will see about that. Kimo, I still think he has a decent game week ahead of him. Not the worst team. So yeah, it will be interesting to see the Aston Villa Newcastle game especially. But yeah, the Newcastle boys are definitely someone that you could potentially sell this upcoming game week. Next up, we have your brother, the manager of the week, Tim Nisanka, and his team is actually looking even better because he also has Richarlison against Brentford at home. Pretty jealous of everyone with him for this game week in particular. After that, not so much, and maybe Madison, who is someone that we didn't talk about on your current plans. Actually, he was actually a player that I did list as well. He's better long term, but for this game week, I think Richarlison's more sure of starting and playing 90 minutes than the Madison. So I think he's a really good pick. And that's the one Tim has already. Tim also has the issue that he needs more funds to do Alvarez to Haaland next week. But I think he can just wait one more week and basically get more information about all the players and be able to select who he's going to sell next week rather than this week to fund that Alvarez to Haaland move. Whether that is Watkins if he fails against Newcastle, Saka if he looks bad against Nottingham Forest, or Solanke if he again struggles against West Ham, for example. I think he can just wait a week and just basically start the same team that he has now, because it's looking really, really strong with most of the players that you really want in your team currently. So yeah, any comments about your brother's team and what he should do in your opinion? And also there's a bit of a benching dilemma here as well, because all the defenders have decent fixtures at least. Gabriel against Nottingham Forest away, Walker against Burnley at home, and Pedro Porro against Brentford at home. And then he has Trent on the bench with Chelsea at home as well. Would you start Trent over any of these players?
Maybe Gabriel,
Yeah?
to be honest, just because Trent is usually very good against the bigger. Sometimes he gets absolutely clowned on the big matches, but at
Yeah.
Anfield he tends to score a free kick and all this time. Like I think that potential is way too high to be
Yeah.
ignored.
Yeah.
And whilst Gabriel,
Scored 17
course,
points last game.
yeah, of course, and
Nottingham
think
Forest, I think, have conceded like a lot of set pieces this season as well.
yes, so it is a bit of a dilemma.
Does he bench Palmer? Does he
No,
take that risk?
I don't.
No.
I mean, it just depends on what sort of match picture you think the game is going to be. I personally think that Chelsea are going to get the snot beaten out of them. And could that mean that Trent was a big factor to it? Yes.
Yeah.
Is Trent ready to start, though? Did he start against Norwich today?
He came on and played the final 20 minutes or so.
That doesn't mean anything, right?
I mean, he could
Is that
actually
it?
play.
Is
It's a
that
pretty big
him
game.
being rested for the Chelsea game, or is
He
that
just came back from injury, so I think they just knew that they were going to beat Norwich and probably wanted to give Bradley another chance at right back. And he got an assist as well, to be honest. So
so? I don't know.
I think Trent starts. I think it's like I would say around 70% chance that Trent starts, but maybe that's enough to put you off starting him, especially for someone with a team like Tim's, which basically has no like weak points. Maybe Alvarez, because we know Haaland's going to be back and he's going to be subbed on in this game. So Alvarez maybe plays 60 minutes, but he does play Burnley at home. There's such high potential. He's a penalty taker. I think it's a really tough decision. Basically, we were going to start even Solanke and Brantford for that matter. Brantford started for Kimo and he's third bench here for Tim. Bench boost, is that something you would consider potentially?
I don't know. I'll ask him because I think it wouldn't be the worst ish because it's a headache benching a lot of these players,
Yeah.
and he has a really strong team. And if he does any transfers on top of that, that could help or sort of helps towards the dilemma, then he 100% I think should bench boost. For example, if he gets rid of Solanke for someone crazy,
Joe Pedro, for example.
yeah, or if he gets because yeah, there's multiple players that he can get as well on top of that. So
Get the fixture ticker. Yeah, Joe Pedro, Luton away, not the worst fixture. West Ham, Bournemouth at home. They don't have a striker, really, in the game. Fulham, Jimenez against Everton. Nah, it's not the best fixture either.
no, he could just
Gabriel
stand pat.
Jesus against Forest. He starts.
No, could be a weird one, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's the worst idea to bench boost
Yeah,
because I have a feeling someone he'll bench is gonna go nuts. Not nuts like fucking Palmer and Areola did for me, but
yeah,
nuts enough. So and yeah, because like this is the sort of game where TA could like goal and assist, and just
yeah,
that is like probably 12 points on its own. So
yeah. I think it's just like you have to bench one really good player, and then the other three players are decent at least, or Dubravka is probably not decent, but at the same time, goalkeepers can score a lot of points against tough opposition as well because they get a lot of saves. They could get penalty saves, maybe not
yeah,
against Douglas Luiz, but if Watkins would step up to take a penalty, maybe.
yeah.
So yeah, I think bench boost is also something that should be in consideration for Tim as well. So interesting game week ahead, even
I'll
though
skim.
he could just stand pat. But The final thing I want to ask you as well, which you can also ask him, is what do you think is the best captaincy choice? Because I think Tim sort of has like the main guys, apart from maybe De Bruyne, as potential captaincy shouts. So do you think Foden is the best captaincy shout? Do you think Richarlison is the one you should back if you have him? Can Jota keep up his form? What is looking like the best captaincy option for you out of these players, do you think?
I think it's between Watkins, Foden, and Richarlison.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Watkins maybe even numero uno simply because we know that Aston Villa are really good at home.
Yeah.
And Richarlison is a weird one.
Do you think,
So
because Madison is most likely going to be back, at least play 30 minutes at least, maybe he starts even and plays 60 minutes. Do you think that will help Richarlison? I assume it will.
100%.
Yeah.
I 100%. I think it's going to be Madison's on 2.0 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, I think especially because we know Richarlison's going to play striker. So yeah, I think it's going to massively help.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of hilariously, even though it's Poor who constantly gets the assist for Richarlison, I think that's the one thing they've been missing. They've been missing that creative outlet. So yeah, I think it will massively help.
Yeah. And you predicted 4-2 for Spurs here as well. So yeah. I actually think Richarlison is probably the best captaincy choice, to be honest.
Yeah, fair. Might have to bring him back into my team. I don't know.
I don't know. It's interesting. I wouldn't. On a wildcard, you can bring him in for sure because you have everything else sorted. But with Son potentially coming back as well, it depends what happens in South Korea. If they get knocked out now against Saudi Arabia and he's going to be back for GW23, I think especially then Richarlison will be way more of a rotation risk with Timo Werner coming in as well. And he's been playing a lot lately too. And Brenton Johnson is back. Solomon is going to be back from injury as well.
But they're not going to bench someone who's scoring all the time.
They're going to get their midfielders back as well. And Madison being back means that Kulusevski plays on the wing again. So I think Richarlison is sort of like an uncertainty for future game weeks. But I think for this game week in particular, I think he is just hand him the captaincy and let him go out with a bang before he's more of a rotation risk, I would say, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you think that as well?
Yeah, I'm convinced by that too. Right?
Yeah, but I agree with you though. I don't have Richarlison, and I am between Watkins and Foden currently. So I think you've sort of gotten it spot on there with those three guys. But any other rogue captaincy shouts you can see? If you look at the fixture ticker for GW22, any players that you could go for? SA, would he be someone you would consider, or is that too?
I think that's too risky. I mean,
yeah. Arsenal against Forest have been conceding goals for fun lately.
Yeah.
Saka isn't the best away, but Ødegaard, for example, Jesus.
Yeah, sure. Even Gabriel, why not?
Gabriel Jesus, Gabriel Martinelli, Gabriel Magalhaes.
Magalhaes, yeah, why not? If you want to back the headers,
set these
go
goals.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, as someone who watched the entirety of Brentford versus Nottingham Forest as well, they were there for the taking. So I totally think that captaining an Arsenal player against them wouldn't be the worst. They are better at home, granted, but I think Arsenal are sort of back operating to sort of decent capacity. So I don't see captaining an Arsenal player as the highest negative either. So
yeah. In general, I'm just very envious of Tim's team and his scores lately. I think the last two game weeks, it's been within the top 50k for both game weeks in total. So just fantastic returns from him after his wildcard in game week 19. He actually went a bit earlier than me on the wildcard. But it has paid off massively for him. He started Palmer when I benched him and hits 18 points, and he brought in Jota and captained him for his 38 points, even though I was a bit lucky when I went with a cheaper option just to have more flexibility. And now he has an even better team again for this game week, and potentially with Richarlison as captain. He could go even further away from me in the league. But yeah, well done to Tim for being manager of the week for the second time this season. And maybe he can make a hat-trick out of it. Hopefully not, but maybe. Or maybe one of you guys watching can intercept him and be number one for a particular game week if you join the FPL Scope Mini League with the league code V9JT0D, and you get a chance to be the manager of the week and be featured on the podcast, like Tim's or Kevin's brother Tim has been twice. Anyways, that has been it for this podcast. Kevin, as always, I'm going to leave the last word to you. And yeah, let's see if there's any positivity this time or if it's, again, negativity, as always.
Oh, fuck VAR, man.
Oh, yes. This I can get behind.
No,
Yes.
I think the VR
Finally.
as a system
Finally.
is fine,
Terrible.
but officiating in the Prem is just so dire. Like it's dire everywhere, but man, some of the shit that I keep seeing week in, week out from the Premier League officiating, it's just dog shit. So you know what? Fuck them.
Cool. See ya next time. Bye.
Bye bye.